Hello lords, my ladies, I'm the Night VTuber Ragnar Level On. Welcome to the Beginner's Guide for Super Robot Wars Y, which we'll be doing by using the exhumed corpse of Super Robot Wars 30. In case it wasn't obvious, I don't like this game that much. So some jokes will be had at its expense. I just need to let people in my Discord know that I'm streaming. I think I'm gonna get a copyright claim for the Jam Project song. They don't usually copyright strike you or claim you and make it like unusable, but I'm always a little bit concerned. So if you have never touched a Super Wars game, or you're thinking of picking one up and you're like, I don't know what I should be doing and I don't want to screw up, that's what I'm going to cover. So let's start by just starting up a new game and jumping in, not a new game. Normal is fine. I think you'll quite possibly have more fun playing on hard or even expert if Y is anything like 30, because there's not really as much of a resource problem in these games as there can be in earlier games. Like in earlier games, for example, there were some stages where, because you kept the money after a game over, you could like farm them for money, and that would sometimes help a lot, but you don't really need to do that in 30 because of the front mission system, and I expect that that's how it will work in Y, based on what they've shown us so far, so we're just going to jump into normal for now. Now, in previous Super Wars games, earlier ones, if you picked like which character you picked would usually put you on a completely different route, and it might delete the other character from existence. But more recent games where you've been able to pick a protagonist, the one that you didn't pick becomes a supporting character. In theory, in this case, they become a secret character rather than a supporting character. So your first and last name, this is what the character will be called. Nickname is how they will appear in menus and in battle screens, so you need to be aware of that. Now, birthday is the fun part. This will change your character's spells, their spirit commands. So if you want, you can put in your own birthday and see what you get. However, there are a few birthdays that are very useful. The best known one is 1111B. This is the birthday and blood type of Terada, who is the game director for Super Wars games. I'm not sure if they still are, but I assume they still are, because that's the kind of game we've been getting. I'm just going to jump over to Akarasu and double check. And I knew I should have done this before I started, and I thought, no, it's fine. I'll just, write something up, and then I remembered that that's not how it works. Okay, no, it's just the Terada birthday 1111B. So in earlier games, the spirits that you could get from this were sometimes extremely broken, but in this game... How did you not know about 1111B? I'm sure I've mentioned that. Okay, well, in older games you often got really broken spells. In this game and more recent games, you will mostly get really useful support skills, which tend to be much more useful than traditional self-buffing skills. So we'll just go with that for now. This game lets you pick whether you start on Earth with super robots or in space with real robots. Now, unless you're doing a King Missions only playthrough, in which case you have to pick space, as I discovered the hard way during that challenge, you won't get locked out of anything picking either route. It's really just down to whatever you like more. So I might just pick this because I've done it less often. So once you start, we'll get this FMV, which I'm going to skip because I've seen it before, and you'll fall into this kind of visual novel portion. So these you can read through at your own pace. You can also play through them more quickly by holding R1 and circle. which accelerates the text like that. If you miss something, you can go back by hitting triangle, which is whatever the top face button is on an Xbox controller. I think it's Y, because it's the opposite of a Nintendo one. And I was looking to see if I could find a yeah, so if you press square, then you can look in text and see like character profiles, or for these highlighted terms, you can press square again and it'll give you a glossary entry. So if you don't know what kind of series are in the game, or you haven't seen a series that's in the game and they start using keywords, you can check it out this way, which is very useful. If you want to skip the visual novel portion entirely, you can press R1 or right bumper and press start, and that will skip you to the start of the stage, or to a choice if there's a choice that you have to make. Although you don't have to make too many choices in modern games. It's not like Alpha or the original Masukishin games where those are like very visual novel inspired, so they have a lot of branching paths. So as you can see, the acceleration command also works here. I have seen this multiple times before, so I don't need to see it again, but something that you may find interesting is that if you use the skip function, it will just skip to whatever the next event is. So you will have to do this a lot, and in some cases it's actually slower than just accelerating through the text. So the game does also have a nice little tutorial system now, which didn't used to be true because Japanese tactical and strategy games still to this day come with pretty thick manuals, but obviously that's not the case if you are playing like either a localized version or or you're playing the like a version that you got a backup copy of, for example, that didn't come with the manual, or you just can't read the manual because you can't read Japanese, which are all things. So this is the board layout. If you've ever played a Fire Emblem game or a TAC RPG, like 100 Line for example, this will look pretty familiar, and it works largely like you think it does. You can zoom in and out using your right stick, and there are a few options that I want to look at before we get into the rest of it. So you can get to the options by clicking anywhere on the map. Note that this uses Nintendo button layout. So circle is the yes button and X is the no button. I think you can change that by using the switch button layout option in Steam if you're playing on Steam, but I'm so used to playing with the Japanese button setup that it's like really frustrating to go to anything else. So first of all, we've changed the pace speed to fast. Yeah, pretty much. So change that to fast. Under quick commands, I like having this set to search. So what this does is if you're like, oh, I want to cast like this specific spell, you hit square and it shows you all of the spells that you have access to, and then if you click on them, then it will show you a unit that has them. Or you can click on skills, or even look at active abilities and find a unit that you need. So other than that, I recommend keeping this on none. The reason for this is that if this is on none, see how my cursor is moving at the moment, if I then hold triangle, it speeds up the cursor, which is really nice because maps can get pretty big. This is a reasonably small map and it's largely concentrated in this area, but hey, how's it going? Other than that, these on unit ones, I recommend keeping the triangle one on none if you're using this one on none, because that way if you are on a unit and you start pressing triangle to move the cursor more quickly, it won't pull up a menu, and this can be whatever you want. I'm going to set it to transform because that's how I prefer it. if you want to look at a unit's stats, you can, for enemies, you can hit circle twice, or you can hit X to get a quick look. And yeah, circle twice will bring you to that. For player characters, you can go click stats. Unlike in G Generation, the wait command will not appear on a unit that hasn't moved yet, so you don't need to worry about accidentally ending your turn. The one last thing that I bring up about the system menu is that the piece display can be really helpful for some people. So by default, you can see that so you can see here that the Hukabine is like on the map in its actual colors, and these guys are also on the map in their actual colors, but that can be a bit annoying when you're zoomed all the way out. So one thing you can do is you can go to system and set this to force, and as you can see, the Hukabine has now been dyed blue and the enemy units have been dyed red. This is particularly useful on stages where your characters and the enemies are using the same mechs, which doesn't happen that much anymore, but it is a thing that can happen. So it's useful to know about this. And if you set it to the zoom command, what it will do instead is while you're up close, it will have them in normal colors, but if you zoom out far enough, then it will put them in force colors, which can be pretty useful, especially if you are playing like far away from the screen. Okay. So let's start by looking at what a unit can do. So you can move around, you can cast spirits, there's whatever this is, and you can look at unit stats. So why don't we start by looking at stats. So this gives you a little overall. So let's start with the pilot. Yeah, definitely. So pilots, the level isn't used in calculation for most things. There are a couple of skills in some games that it matters for, but this isn't one of them, I don't think. Morale you can basically think of as extra stats. If you have 100 morale and you are dealing damage with a melee weapon, then it will be calculated using your character's CQB stat or their melee stat plus 100 because you have 100 morale. So high morale, very good. Low morale, very not good. And raising morale used to be a pain in the ass where it was very individualized, but now it's generic across everyone. You get 1 point for every interaction that you have with an enemy unit, and 3 points for shooting down an enemy unit. And all allied pilots get 1 point whenever any allied pilot shoots down an enemy, and all allied pilots except the one that gets shot down get +1 morale when an ally gets shot down. So morale, easy peasy now. SP is used for casting spirit commands, which we will get into shortly. CQB and RNG are your melee and range stats, so those are used for dealing damage. Skill is used to activate some effect. It's also the stat that governs critical hits, so you can kind of think of it as being like a luck stat. Defense reduces the damage you take, evade makes you harder to hit, accuracy makes your weapons more accurate. On the right you can see her character's skills, and if you want details you press the details button and the game will tell you the details. So we can see that Az has this skill, which we don't know the name of it yet, but it does still work, which is that when she's at 140 or higher morale, she gets +5 to all stats and just does a flat extra 10% damage, which is really nice. As she loses HP, then her hit and evade, critical rate and defense all go up. So as she loses HP, the stronger she gets. She can attack at half damage for adjacent allies. And she has enhanced attacks, so her support attacks will always be critical hits, which do an extra 30% damage. So pretty good. For spells, she has Attune and 4C. This is because we use the 1111B birthday. So Attune casts Strike on one ally, and 4C casts Alert on one ally. You'll often hear people referring to these as like the spell that they cast, rather than the effect that they cast, because there's an equivalent self-buffing version of this. So, and you can also now see the duration, so this lasts until the start of your next turn. Not the start of the enemy turn, the start of your next turn, which is really good. 4C only lasts for the next attack that you take. So, easy so far. Score is how many kills they have. And at certain thresholds, your character will become an ace and then a great ace. I believe in this game it's I think it's 70 and no, is it 60 and 80? It's something weird in this game because the game is really big. Ace bonuses. Okay, it's 60 and 80. So every character has a unique ace bonus. Which for Az, although we can't see it here, Az will get +1 move and then an extra 10% damage dealt at 130 morale or higher. And there are also some other benefits to having a status, like starting with more morale and so on and so forth. But you don't have to worry about that too much just at the moment. So if we jump over to the mech side of things, so here we have the Hukabine 30, HP, when it runs out the unit is dead. Energy is used to power some weapons. It is also used for moving if the unit is flying or in space, in which case it costs you 1 energy per square. And all units passively regenerate 5 energy every turn. So you shouldn't become completely stun-locked, but it can be a bit rough. I actually, way back in the dark days of OG2 GBA, I managed to fail a stage because Latuni ran out of energy and was was 6 panels away from the retreat point, so I game overed. Okay, terrain penalty on maps, really simple. You mouse over the map tile and you press X, or whatever the bottom button is, so like B on a Nintendo controller, and I think it's A on an Xbox controller. And you can see down the bottom here, we have this defense, evasion, HP regen, EN regen. Now, the terrain penalty is never told to you directly, and it's actually been that way for a really long time. I don't think any game has actually done that in mainline, but as a rule, if a terrain gives defense and evasion, then it will cost more to move through. So the Hukabine 30 has a move of 6, and these apparently don't have any noticeable movement penalty associated with them. So these ones are okay, but if it was a thicker tile, I don't think there's any forest tiles on this map. I don't know, we've got forest tiles over here, which are plus 10% defense, plus 5% evasion. These can sometimes be hard to move through. It doesn't look like we have mountain tiles, but those are often like plus 20 defend and evade and are really hard to move through. Here's Apple. Basically, if the tile does something good for you, it's usually harder to move in, but not always. The type, this tells you where you can use the unit. These are usually air, ground, and water. It's kind of assumed that your unit will work in space, because traditionally the end leg of every Super Wars game ends in space, so if your unit doesn't work in space, then it's not very useful, which has led to some problems in the past. So nowadays it's just kind of assumed that everything is space-proofed. Below that, unit terrain. This used to be double-sided, so it used to be pilots had terrain and units had terrain. Now only units have terrain, at least for series games like this, which you don't really move pilots between units very much, and when you do, it's usually between like the same series, so you don't have to worry about it. So you can see here, if we're forced into the water, that's a B. We will take a small penalty. It's like 10%. If you go all the way down to like D or E, it starts getting really nasty. A means that there's no bonus and no penalty, and S gives you plus 10% evasion in that terrain, which is all well and good. Armor reduces the damage you take. Now, I'm assuming that this works vaguely like it does in OGs, where there's a fairly complicated system for it, but basically more armor is better always. Like, Obviously, evading attacks is always the best outcome, since then you don't take damage at all, but that isn't an option and is not useful for some units that want to take some damage. So, and mobility, as you can imagine, is your evasion stat, and sight works as accuracy. To the right of that, you have the power part slots, so those are for like accessories, I guess would be the equivalent. You equip them to a unit. They can be consumables, which are used once per map. They can provide extra stats, they can provide extra abilities, all kinds of stuff that's useful. And then further right, you have all those little black squares. Those will light up if a unit has one of a number of abilities, like if the unit has a shield or a barrier or a repair unit, stuff like that. And active ability is for other things that don't fall into those categories, but we don't have any of those right now. Right, so in older games, the way that this was done was that beam weapons tended to have very poor water stats, often C or D, and quite often if you had a unit that had D in terrain and you were in that terrain, then you couldn't use it. So that's mostly changed now, in part just because there are not as many water stages as there used to be, because water stages really suck. And we don't have a Getter Robo that turns into Getter 3, so we don't really need water stages, outside of the DLC, obviously. Hopefully we will have water stages in Y, because they're doing Getter Robo Arc, which has a getter that transforms, unlike this game. So that's probably going to be more relevant, but in this case, you can see here that our weapons will take penalties for being used in water, but it's not the worst thing ever. You can also see, if you look at the far left of the screen, there's a little fist icon and the reticle icon. Those tell you whether it's a melee or a ranged weapon. So this will scale off your melee stat, this will scale off your range stat. Class tells you if the weapon is a map weapon or a combination attack. The property value, the green handgun icon with the arrow is for... Actually, can I... No, okay. That means that you can use it after moving. We call those post-movement weapons, because in older games they had a little circle P. Yeah, because Rumi uses them. Now, being a veteran of OGs, I'm not sad to have less water stages, because like, I've played Ryusei route, I've had enough water stages, thank you. They even made it less shit in the OGs version, because all of the guest vents and stuff that you get on that route are waterproofed and have better than they should water stats, which is really funny because in the GBA version that was not true, and it made Ryusei's route a pain in the ass, which is kind of funny because the game sort of suggests that it's where you should start if you're new, and yeah, not a fun time. So, post-movement weapons, you can move and then use them. Weapons without that icon, you can't use them after you've moved, which means that they often are used to counterattack on the enemy phase. As you might have gathered from the fact that we have one unit and there are 4 enemy units, this is a fairly enemy phase centric game in Fire. Like, to compare it to Fire Emblem terms, like, this is an enemy phase game. You are not doing anywhere near as much on player phase as you are doing in enemy phase. Yeah, OG2 has a couple, but a bunch of them are basically event stages, and the few that aren't, you can kind of just go around the water, so it's not too bad. Although, there's a couple of really cursed things you can do in OG2, like if you put an A adapter on the Grungust, then you can use its tank, which has like good water terrains for some cursed reason on a bunch of stages to way better effect than it should be able to be used for, which is always fun. This yellow icon means this is a beam weapon. Now, this is relevant because many defensive properties will interact with beams specifically. So if Gundam is around, you have eye fields. There's Elgaim in this game, but they all have Zimmerite coating, so all the heavy metal enemies take 1000 less beam damage, but Leap Slasher, which is not a beam weapon, doesn't engage with that system at all. Now, you can't see it on this screen because I don't have it, but the leftmost property box is the counterattack property, which is a sword with a little arrow on it. If you select a weapon with the counterattack property when you're being attacked on the enemy phase, your unit will attack first. So those are really strong on units that are powerful but not good at dodging or defending themselves. Moving on to the right of that, you have the attack power. Now, these two look kind of the same, but the way that attack power works is that it's kind of multiplied using the pilot's range, like, damage stat. The actual calculation is quite complicated if it works the same way as it does in OGs, which I'm pretty sure it does. So 100 more weapon power will translate to significantly more than 100 more damage. But we can actually test that by using a suspend save. So, oh no, we can't. Hang on, we can almost test that by using a suspend save. So we can go ahead over here and use this beam sword and enjoy Az's really good theme. So that did 2320 if we jump back. And we're going to pass the turn because we're not in photon rifle range. I need to not attack this one, and the reason for that is because it's standing on a defense tile. As is this one, so I won't get good damage. This has actually already become flawed because I'm now going to have more morale than I should, which will influence the damage even more. I should have actually done this the other way around, but we're here now. So yeah, that did 2496. So at this level, the difference in weapon power is kind of negligible. But later in the game, it becomes much more important as pilot stats start to get higher. You'll begin getting significantly more damage out of even small increases to weapon power. So Leaf Slasher in particular is strong enough to potentially one-hit KO enemy units on this stage. However, as you can see in the bottom left, you actually need to reach 110 morale on the pilot before it can be used, which is one of the ways that weapons are balanced. Often you'll need to meet a morale threshold for a unit to really reach its full potential, which could be because of unlocking special systems. It could be because that's where all of its really good attacks are. It might even be because of the pilot having a specific skill, like Suzaku from Code Geass has a skill called Curse of Geass, which is incredibly strong, but only activates at 120 or 130 morale. So getting him to that threshold as quickly as possible is really useful and has an outsized impact on the amount of damage that he can do. Other than attack power, you have the weapon's range. So this one you can use after moving, so you move 6 and then can hit 1 to 3. This one you can hit 1 to 6 but can't move. This one you can't hit at point blank, but you can hit at something in range 2. Something I want to point out is that range 1 in this game means these 4 panels. It is not like a D&D 5-foot diagonal. A diagonal tile is 2 tiles away. There is one exception to this rule, which is for determining positioning for combination attacks, which I'm not sure how I'm going to demo that, but I will figure out a way. Other than that, you have the weapon's accuracy, which is just a bonus that's applied with sight and pilot accuracy. Critical rate bonus if it has one. Ammo, this is independent, it's not universal, so this has 10 shots and this has 5 shots. And energy cost, if the weapon has any, that's how much it costs to use it for one attack. So, something important to mind as well, you can see that the weapons have their own adaptivity. This applies for the terrain that the enemy is in, not the terrain that you are in. So shooting into water with a beam weapon, you'll take a penalty. But shooting out of water with a beam weapon, you probably won't take a penalty. It's kind of weird. This is, however, more sensible than it is in OGs, because I was doing some research on OGs for the Let's Play that I've been doing, like the re-Let's Play that I've been doing that's currently on hiatus because Lauren, who makes all the really nice slides for it, can't do that, and I don't want to do it without her. That has this like really cursed way of handling it where if your unit is like shooting into the enemy's square, then your weapon's terrain value matters for where your unit is standing. But if your unit moves into the enemy's terrain, so like for a melee attack they like move into their screen, then it's the terrain in the enemy unit's panel that is counted for the weapon's terrain bonus. It's really weird and cursed, and they've basically fixed it here so that it's always where you're shooting that matters. We don't have anything else to really go through. You can see that there's like required skill down at the bottom, but there's no real point in going into that because we won't have to worry about that for a little bit. So for now, we don't really have a reason to cast a Spirit Command, and we've got a nice defensive tile here that happens to be in range of an enemy, and will also keep the enemy from hitting us too hard. Because at the moment, our only defensive ability is this, and as you can see, this costs 10 SP, and we only have 26 at the moment. We'll get 5 back every turn. In more recent games, instead of starting at max 8 SP but never getting any, you start at half SP but you generate 5 every turn, which means that long stages are less painful, but it also means that you don't get to like spend on everything right away most of the time. So I'm going to go over here and attack, and this little screen will tell you basically everything you need to know. Those little boxes that are under the character names, those will light up if a Spirit Command is active, so that you can tell what you're getting into. Now in battle, you can speed up the animation by holding circle, and you can skip the whole animation by pressing X. You can also skip just to the next animation by pressing square, which is kind of useful if you're like, for example, fighting a boss and you are going to get, for example, a support attack, and you have seen the boss's one attack animation several times already, so you don't want to see it anymore. Now, you can see that after we moved and attacked, Az's unit is now grayed out. We now can't move them again, and we can now end our phase. Then it becomes the enemy's phase, and they get to do all the same stuff. Enemies in games that aren't Super or D won't cast spells outside of specific events, so you don't need to worry about that. So you can see that, like, I've done literally twice as many attacks on the enemy phase as I have in my phase. So this is very enemy phase centric. If you know that there are going to be reinforcements, then the best thing that you can do on a route map like this, like you can see here that the objective is just to defeat all enemies. I don't have to worry about defending a point or certain units. It's so much better if you can get the enemies to spawn on enemy phase, because if that happens, like, you know, and a bunch of reinforcements spawn in over here, then on the same enemy phase, they're going to run over here, and I'm going to be able to reposition accordingly. Whereas if they spawn on my phase and I don't want to like loiter here, then I need to move towards them, then I'll move and likely get initiative on the attack. This is less important in this game than it was in older games, which often had very strict turn limits for things like skill points and secrets. It's less important here, but it does save often an entire turn if you can get the enemies to spawn on enemy phase, so it's worth considering. Now, as you can see, we've just picked up a new unit, so as you can see, this one is a bit different. Koji's melee stat is 10 points higher than his range stat, and his defensive stat is also way higher than his evade stat, whereas if we look at Az, her defense is a little bit higher than her evade stat, but her evade is 10 points higher than Koji's. Koji also has guard, so he takes less damage at high morale, and he gets extra morale when he takes damage. So you already kind of know that this character is more about taking hits than evading them. He also has persist, which cuts damage to 1/8 for one attack, and bullseye, which lets him have 100% accuracy for one turn. Older players will often call this strike because that's what it was called in the early official localizations of OG 1 and 2 on the Game Boy Advance, and it's often used in fan translations, so you'll hear that a lot. As for his unit, you can see that this one has the air terrain type and has an A in the air, so it can actually fly and do okay at it. And it has a repair unit, which is what this is. So if he moves next to another unit, he will be able to repair it for an amount and get some experience for doing so. Units with a repair device can also repair themselves, and in some games they also get passive HP regen, which is really useful. So I'm just going to land him, and you can see though that he doesn't have a particularly good post-movement weapon, right? So his best one is post-movement 1 to 3, but his attacks are really expensive. However, they are also quite powerful, and they don't have any morale cost. But since he can't get over there, I'm just going to have him wait. Now, you'll notice that I actually moved him very quickly, and the way that you do this is you select move, you hold R1 or R bumper, and you can see that the edge of my movement radius is actually pulsing a slightly different color. If while I'm still holding this, I move the cursor, then it will jump to the furthest part of that point. So you can move very quickly to your unit's maximum possible movement. So in this case, I'm going to move over here so that we're still on a defensive tile. And we'll block this one. If you have this off, then you'll still get a look at what's going on. You can hold circle to speed it up or hold X to skip it. I recommend doing that on enemy phase because enemy phases late in the game tend to have a lot of units, and games where that is not fast can take a really long time to play. Looking at you, Alpha 1 and Gaiden, which take forever to play despite being really good. Now, the shoot down text that you see here, this basically discounts unforced critical hits, and it doesn't count random activation skills. So you can still get a shoot down off this, and if you get a critical, you can still get a shoot down even if you don't have the indicator. But the indicator means that if no shields come into play, if you don't get a crit, if you don't have a random ability, then you'll get a shoot down. So you can take a look at that. Something that you definitely want to check out though is that there's a lot of dialogue in these games that often involves characters making comments on things that aren't part of their own series. So you want to try and watch a lot of the battle animations. I usually watch on player phase and skip on enemy phase. Oh, enemies actually did spawn over there. Awesome. Except I think they all get shot down in an event. Yeah, so Hiro Yui is the quote-unquote main protagonist of Gundam Wing. His voice actor, Midorikawa Hikaru, is like a huge nerd for Super Robot Wars. He actually voices Ando Masaki, who is like the original Banpresto original character. Hello, Casey. And he does like extra dialogue. Thank you, Casey, for standing on my keyboard. Midorikawa does extra dialogue at no extra cost, unlike most other voice actors, so his characters always have tons of extra dialogue, and he's even done playtesting for some Super Robot Wars games. So Hiro in particular tends to have tons of specific dialogue for like enemies when he's using the Wing's Buster Rifle or Wing Zero's Buster Rifle. So yeah, like you can see here as well, because that was on enemy phase, like that didn't matter, and then Dry Striker moved over here as part of the event, so it could immediately get into the battle and start being attacked by the enemies. And as you can probably imagine, the Dry Striker is like completely overpowering for these. Oh, and I have custom music set. I forgot that. Using this track started as a joke because you get up to some pretty shady stuff in this game, and then the last act happened and it was like, oh, we were just guessing correctly. So if you want to know how to set up custom music, you go... do I remember how to do this? Okay, yeah, you press start and it will update the list. All of these files are in one of my game folders. Now I have to look up which one it is because I can never remember, and it keeps changing. I think I've got you on D drive. Super Robot Wars 30. There we go. Okay, so yeah. These files, you go to your Steam folder for this game. So on Steam, it's right-click, Properties, Browse Local Game Files, create a folder called SRW Music, all caps, no spaces, and the files that go in it need to be MP3 files, and they have to have a 96 kilobits per second bitrate, or the game will vomit and not play them. There are some caveats to this. So, in some games that have this system, if you have multiple units with the same song set, yeah, the Gundam Wing Endless Duel music. So if you have units that have the same theme song, then in some games they will restart instead of continuing playing, which is how game music that isn't broken works. But otherwise you can go like here and you can swap between built and owned. So built and owned using the square button. So this is custom music, this is in-game music. And you can see that it can handle like Japanese characters and other stuff. And you can change, you can even change where the BGM starts for some songs, which is really useful. if you have a song with a long intro, but I usually can't be bothered, so I don't. Anyway. You don't... Do you have support attack yet? No, you have support defend, which is like much worse. So this unit has subpilots. Yep, helps if I press the right button. So as you can see, subpilots mostly don't have actual pilot stats. They just have spirit commands and SP. So for these kind of subpilots, you only have to buy them SP up and you don't have to worry about anything else. That's only true in games where you have individualized PP, but PP is a universal resource in this game, which I dislike. So you probably won't ever get around to buying SP up on them. These guys don't matter too much in combat, but they do offer additional spells. So units with subpilots are like always better than units without subpilots if those units are otherwise comparable. 96 kilobits per second bitrate. 9.6. I don't know why it's that, because it's really cursed, but you can actually get away with other things, but I know that 96 works. I can actually, you know, I can check what the game can and can't read right now, because if I can have my cursor back, thank you. Since I've got that open, if we go over here and I say change, so I can like compare this to the list that I have. These ones that are labeled with numbers, these are actually from a pack that was put out by another fan on YouTube. I will find that video and link to it after I finish the stream. I should have done that already. So these ones all work. These are all 96 kilobits per second, which is what prompted me to say that. These ones that are differently named are my own, and they're actually at a variety of bit rates, but not all of them are working, and not all of them are sorted the same way in game that they are in my browser, which is always fun. So I have mostly the Metal Gear Rising soundtrack, which is all 193 kilobits per second or thereabouts, but you can see that it works, even though this one is 191 kilobits per second. Blooming Villain is 210 kilobits per second. The stuff from ENV is like up to 212 kilobits per second. Am I missing some stuff? Or did I just forget to... this Getarobo track is up at 199 kilobits per second, so it's kind of random-ish, but I can promise you that 96 always does work. Yeah, fortunately that's not too hard to do nowadays, but yeah, that is like an issue that has often plagued the custom music function, is trying to get it to actually play nicely. If it's broken, I don't know if any of these tracks are broken so they just don't play at all. So, the joke I was getting at with with this track, this will actually work better if I show you, hang on. Especially if I'm on the right set of speakers. There we go. Where is my YouTube? I need it. If I was on Twitch, I could actually just play this, but I'm not, so... Is it this one? No, come on. I might have to play it off my own hard drive. Should be here. Yes. Because I think if I play the whole song, then it will get me copyright striked. So I'm just gonna load up this. Go up above PC game. Someone put this mashup together, which, do I have audio for you? Yes, I do. No, I don't, because my computer doesn't like that for some reason. Why are you not getting audio? Oh, because that's set incorrectly. There we go. Are we working now? Okay, yes, maybe. Just once, it would be nice if, like, anything that I did, it just worked without me having to play with it.
Restart.
That's really weird, because it should be working fine. Like, I'm using DualShock. Are you playing on Steam, though? Because if that's the case, then Steam input is the likely culprit. Why are you not working? I love it when I want to do just, like, one thing. Just one thing, and it's like, nah, not today. Do I have a different NPC? No, that can't be right, because it only allows one device with the same name. Oh, that usually happens if your controller is not like fully connected properly. Are you using a DualShock 4? Because those have real connectivity problems. I found the way that they grip the cable in at the controller end is like really finicky and wears out really quickly. I was having lots of trouble with that, and then I switched to using a DS5 and it started working perfectly fine. Why am I not getting audio from you? Capture method, capture audio on. Oh, okay, maybe I just needed to do that. Nope. Okay, I'm gonna have to do something. I'll just open it in Firefox and then maybe that'll work. Because why would anything just work, right? Okay, for some reason my last quick image thing is of a cat. Where's my little YouTube thing? Here we go. Now this should work, because it should pick up my Firefox audio, and if it doesn't, I'm going to be really annoyed. So, for whatever reason, the way that the opening theme for Oshinoko is written, it just flows seamlessly into the opening from Shin Getter vs. Neo Getter Robo, which became this like huge meme at the time that Oshinoko was happening, and even like the actual band did that crash cut at a live event, which is amazing. So I jokingly set that as Shin Getter Dragon's BGM and just waited to see if anyone noticed. Yeah, I need to get around to watching season 2 of that, because season 1 of that was amazing. But Lauren hasn't been up to like watching stuff, so I haven't caught up on it. But we had like every kind of crossover meme for that. Someone even did the JoJo Part 4 edit, like with Metamorphosis, which was really funny. Anyway, that's enough of a diversion. Something about the Dreistrega is that it has this yellow aura around it. This is a command aura. Mostly capital ships have it now, but some deployable units have it as well. While that unit is on the field, units that are within that aura get bonuses. The closer they are, the bigger the bonus. And yeah, it's like that. EX action we can finally make use of, so you saw that Koji got some kills. That meant that he built up his EX charge gauge, so now he can try and use these, but these got nerfed in this game, so they cost more, which is good because they were really overpowered when they initially came about in V. Was it V or Z3.2? No, it was V, because Z3 used the tag tension system, which was extremely overpowered, and VXT used like a combo point system. This one, I think this is the best version of the system so far. But these are all really strong, and we won't get to use them very much. So I'm going to put Koji here, and you can see that he can actually repair himself. And he even got XP for it. It's really funny when you level up off that, because it kind of feels like cheating to level up from repairing yourself. Okay, well, you asked for it. So all enemies down, there's a little denouement, these guys show up. Do we actually have to fight these? I genuinely don't remember. Yeah, conveniently, this is what I was talking about with enemy phase. They just moved straight up so I don't have to chase them out over the water. New thing you might have noticed, that the word sight down propped up when the Kakaiju got hit by this. That's because this has the special effect of inflicting accuracy down. A lot of enemies in the late game will just be immune to these. They'll have like robot block or pilot block or full block, which just prevents them from getting debuffed, but in some instances it's really powerful, so don't forget it. Most units that have like Sea-Wiz type weapons will have like an accuracy down or a mobility down debuff on them. Unfortunately, I don't have quite enough morale. This hits in a 3-tile radius, so I could hit them both with the map weapon, but in lieu of that, I'm going to make use of as having support attack. Now, this did cost ammo, but it does not cost the unit's turn. You can see that ours can still make a full move. So support attacks are a great way of getting more power out of a unit. But you can see that ours can't support the Dreistrager because it's flying. If it comes down to land, which for some reason it has ground terrain and A on the ground, so it can just like be on the ground and make use of terrain. Because like, if you're on this but you're flying, you don't get this bonus. You do if you're on the ground. So in earlier games, flying, you could move freely, but you wouldn't get terrain bonuses. In this game, that's not so much of a big deal, but you know, you do have the option of doing that. The way that I think about this is that the support attacking unit or support defending unit has to be able to move to where the unit they're supporting is. So Az's Hukabayan can't fly. So if I go attack normally, you can see that she can't support attack, but if we land the Dreistrager first, then ours is able to support attack right now. Capital ships also have another couple of qualities. First of all, you can move a unit back into them. This will recover the unit's HP and energy over time, but the pilot will also lose 10 morale. In this game, your morale can't fall below 100. In older games, that was not true. You can also have a capital ship recover a unit that is adjacent to it, so if a unit has already moved, then a capital ship can potentially like deep strike up next to it and then recover it to safety. And you can also see that instead of EX action, these have EX orders, which are different. So this one lets a whole ally unit just take another move like a dancer in Fire Emblem. One turn stat boost, morale boost, X charge boost, and emergency retrieval lets you do recover, but for 8 panels. So if you have a unit that you desperately need to get out of trouble, then this is one way to do it. Something that you do need to mind is that on stages with event units that you have to guard, they often can't be loaded into capital ships. So if something happens to them, then you'll need to come up with another way of defending them. You can also see that these units have much more evasion, so like there is a good chance that Mitsuba will miss. However, we have Intuition, which casts both Strike and Alert, or Bullseye and Flash as they're called in this game. So you can see here with that now her hit chance is 100% and the enemy's hit chance is 0%, so they literally cannot hit back. In an event that you are using Strike against an enemy that has cast Alert, Strike wins. Using Strike will also prevent the enemy unit from using Double Image if they have that. Double Image is a defensive ability that has a flat chance in this game, and more recent games it's usually 30%, it used to be 50%. That you just evade an attack regardless of its accuracy, and it only procs on attacks that would have otherwise hit you. So Double Image is actually better than it sounds, because it's not evade 50% of all attacks, it's evade 50% of all attacks that you didn't dodge. Or 30% in more recent games. Using Strike turns that off, which is really important against some bosses. For example, in OG2, the Aguija and the Siebelwind and the Zweizergain both have Double Image, and the Zweizergain especially, if you don't start using Strike, then you will whiff so many attacks because it has 50% Double Image, and you are never going to get its morale below 130 once it gets there. Should talk about supporters as well. So these are kind of like a deck of characters that aren't fighting on the field directly, but are around to, you know, do things in the mech bay or, you know, provide analysis or whatever. So they have both the passive abilities. So in this case, like this guy, the Dreistrager, gets 500 HP back every turn, and at the end of the turn maybe gives you an extra 5 MXP for every enemy unit destroyed. But you can also activate them using SSP, which will restore 3000 HP in the case of Ji-chan, or activate strike in the case of maybe. This is usually on the unit that activates it, which is why you can see Ji-chan is grayed out, or greened out I guess I should say, on Az, who hasn't taken any damage, so she's at full HP. Whereas if we go over here, supporters, we can cast it on here. And now we have HP back. Some supporters are really broken, like Augur from the Iron-Blooded Orphans DLC is like actually disgusting. To give you an idea, his effect was owned by a character in Super Wars T, the previous game, where it was a once per battle thing and it was still disgustingly broken. They locked it behind DLC in this game, but it's still disgusting. So you can see here that Az had a shoot down indicator, but that's assuming that you hit. There's a 6% chance that she'll miss. So just seeing the shoot down doesn't guarantee that you will shoot them down, only that you will shoot them down if the attack hits and none of the defensive stuff comes into play. If there is defensive stuff involved that will always come into play, like for example Zimrite coding against beam weapons, then the game shoot down indicator will take that into account. So, when you shoot down an enemy, your unit will get some EX count. They also get some when they level up. You'll get some money or credits, you'll get some PP, you'll get some experience for the pilot, and you'll get 1 score for each enemy that was shot down. When a pilot levels up, their stats go up by a bit, and they may unlock new spells and new skills. In more modern games, the way that skills are handled is a bit different. You have to do stuff in stages, and the game will either award you what is called a skill part, or it will make it possible for you to make more of them, which I don't know why I'm like stepping through this when there is a skip function, and I've read this before. Now I'm gonna get a ton of stuff because I own like all the DLC. So this is the intermission screen. There's a few things you can do here. First of all, let's have a look at the move screen, just because that's the top option. If you're playing on keyboard and mouse, I strongly recommend using the mouse cursor to get around here, because getting around these on the controller sucks. So you can use these to go straight to missions. I'm just gonna see if I'm... Okay, we can't area move in this chapter, but later on you'll be able to move around more freely, and you'll find little missions that aren't mentioned elsewhere. There will also be little exclamation marks. Those let you do what are called patrol missions. Now, patrol missions, pick 2 of your pilots, any 2 of your pilots, and gives them 500 experience, 2 score, and 50 PP each, or something like that. So it's a little thing. This game in particular, there will sometimes be a pink fairy indicator up here, which tells you that a certain character is actually present at a waypoint on the map. So if you hunt her down and go to her location using the area move function, then she'll give you some stuff. Mission gives you the option to just go straight to a mission in question, so this game will recommend one for you, and you can also compare them. So for example, you can go here first, and you might even want to, because the estimated strength of the enemy unit is lower on this one. These ones with stars next to them are called key missions, so doing these will advance the plot. Ones without stars are optional missions, and doing them will give you extra benefits or follow up on story threads, but isn't necessary to advance the main plot. You will end up doing some optional missions without very careful planning, and that's kind of the intended way for the game to be played, is that you'll do a lot of optional missions, I did a challenge run where we only did key missions, and it mostly went okay, except that there were a couple of points where we nearly soft-locked because I ran out of key missions. Because there's a few points where the game is like, you need to have certain prerequisites to unlock certain key missions, and if you miss them, then you need to do optional missions, which is why I was joking about having to start on the space route in that case. On-board missions are bonus missions, so these may just be like chat ones, so you can see these ones that have speech bubbles are just like a short visual novel scene, and then you get whatever the reward is. But they will also give you like some little challenge missions sometimes, and if you go over to prerequisites, you can see prerequisites for missions that you're already working towards. It will also, in some instances, tell you about potential secrets. So for example, for some optional missions that give you secret units or give you access to units early, the way that you do that might appear in the prerequisites, so make sure you check that out if there's something that you're angling for, especially early on where like Akarasu hasn't been completely filled out yet. You'll have to kind of feel it out with why. Formation is where you do your formation stuff, so power parts, these used to be called option parts, don't get confused. This is the accessories I was talking about. At the moment we have a few, so this one gives all of your non-range 1 non-map weapons plus 1 range. This adds 1 movement to the unit, and this one is a consumable that casts Gain Fortune on the unit once per map. Big change from earlier games that they started doing more recently is that consumables are now like once per stage rather than being consumed and gone forever, which is very nice because it makes them actually usable. Previously, you often wouldn't equip them on units in favor of like passive performance increases, and you would often just sell them. And the really good ones you obviously didn't want to use if you had any other way out of it, so you ended up in like the, you know, what if I need this elixir later? Hey, Kang Nguyen, how's it going? I totally butchered that name. You can sell power parts if you want to, I probably wouldn't in this game. Assign lets you pick a unit to move a pilot to. In the original generation games, this is a much more involved thing. You can assign almost any pilot to almost any unit. In games like this that have a bunch of series, usually pilots will be at least locked to units from their own series. UC Gundam traditionally counts as like one series for this purpose, so you can put characters from like Zeta Gundam in units from, you know, Victory Gundam or Char's Counterattack or whatever, but you can't usually put pilots from Gundam Wing in UC Gundam suits. And most super robots will also be pilot locked. Many units in games like this are pilot locked, so you don't have to worry too much about assign. Option parts is for units that have like equipable packs that really change them, which could be a straight upgrade. Like this game, you have the V2 Gundam, you get one instance of the Assault Buster parts, so you can equip those to one of your V2 Gundams to turn it into the V2 Assault Buster Gundam, and you're all set. In games that have Seed, this is how the Strike Pack mechanic for the Strike Gundam and Impulse Gundam work usually. In this game, it's pretty limited. I think it's just the V2 Assault Buster and the Narrative Gundam that make use of it. Oh, and I assume Chiriko's Scope Dog in the DLC, but I didn't do the DLC, so I don't know. In some games, you really need to be micromanaging this. OG's games have a lot of option parts type units. Z2, you need to really heavily micromanage Chiriko's Scope Dog. So that's where you do that from, but it's often not a big deal in modern like series-based games. Supporters lets you assign supporters to your support deck. As you can see, we have 2 currently, and we're using 2 slots of 6. As you do main stages and optional stages, you'll get more supporters who need to be put into this deck to be usable. So, you know, by the end of the game you have like 30 supporters, but you still only have a few of them that you can pick. Mech upgrading is fairly self-explanatory. You can upgrade their HP, energy, armor, mobility, and accuracy. You also upgrade weapons here, which will raise the power of the weapon fairly significantly. Something worth noting is that after you reach into these tiers, so beyond 6, weapon upgrades begin giving plus 150 power instead of plus 100. And the final upgrade at level 15 gives plus 200 power, which ends up being a lot. And getting a 2000 point swing in your weapon power is like incredibly strong, but weapon upgrading is also very expensive. If you notice as well, you can see that we have these 5 ones here which are a bit smaller. I'm actually going to just jump out to one of the onboard missions that has a bunch of money. Because I want to be able to show this off. That's enough. So earlier games, if you upgraded a unit all the way, so all 10 slots were filled, then you would get a what was called a full upgrade bonus, or a FUB, which is a great term. More recent games, I think starting from Z3 is when they introduced this. If you upgrade a unit to 50%, then you'll get what's called a custom bonus. This is decided based on what the unit itself is, so this is unique to the unit. The Hugo 130 just gets an extra power part slot, but in some units it could be like, you know, maybe their barrier gets stronger, or in the case of the new Gundam, for example, its new type use weapons get plus 50 weapon power per new type level of its pilot, which is pretty interesting. If you then upgrade them all the way, then I think I'm going to need more money for this. I'm going to need more money for this. This actually may still not be enough. Full upgrading is really expensive. Okay. I hope that's enough money. Okay. This one you get to pick. So, endurance up raises HP and energy. These used to be like 2 different things, which is nice. +1 move intrinsically is always nice. Ammo up and cost down are useful for units if you find yourself running out of ammo or energy. Terrain adaptivity up. This one tends to be better on units that are reliant on evasion a bit more, because they'll get a bonus to that, whereas supers don't really care what terrain they're in as long as they're able to move properly. Range up is really useful on some very specific units. Effect resistance, this one is basically full block, it's really nice. And making barrier and armor abilities cost 0 energy. This one is, depending on the unit, it's either completely irrelevant, or you put it on King Jada and it's disgustingly broken because generating armor is really strong. So Once you pick this, you can't change it though. If you are stuck on what to pick, range up and movement up will never be bad, and train adaptivity will never be bad. Do note that this is only for the mech, it's not for the weapons. Weapons don't get a thing like this anymore. In some games, getting weapon rank set to S is a thing that custom bonuses or full upgrade bonuses could do, which is very powerful, but not the case here. Now, you may be thinking, okay, but this is an early game unit, right? Isn't it going to fall off or get, replaced by an upgrade? Yes, but units in this game, in Super Wars games in general, if a unit gets replaced and it has upgrades, then those upgrades will carry over onto the new unit, which is called upgrade carryover. So, for example, this will eventually upgrade into the Hukabine 30th, so 30th. When it does, it will have all of these upgrades. It will also automatically get the custom bonus. Sometimes you have to click again to apply the full custom bonus. It can be a bit weird, but you don't have to worry about losing money usually. This game actually has a notable exception where if you recruit Ceruleum in the main story, then when he leaves at the end of the true ending route, he takes all of the upgrades that you spend on him and you don't get a refund. Normally, if you lose a unit and it's never coming back and it's not getting a replacement with upgrade carryover, you get refunds, but that's not the case here. Z2.1 actually has an interesting example where... Is it 2.1 or 2.2? I think it's 2.1. For a chunk of the game, you have Suzaku and Zex working with you for various reasons, and you get a pretty good reward if Suzaku has enough kills by the end of when they leave, which is interesting because normally you wouldn't use a unit that you know is going to leave that you aren't going to get back, so that's neat. In some games, the upgrade carryover can be significant. So, for example, in Alpha 3, when you upgrade the Strike Gundam, all of its upgrades are passed on to the Freedom, and its upgrades are passed on to the Justice and the Strike Rouge if you got it. And then the Justice's upgrades are passed on to Buster and Duel if you get those. And so if you fully upgrade the Strike, then you upgraded 5 really good units for the cost of 1. So keep an eye out for stuff like that. If you think that's going to be the case with a series based on what's in the series, then that's a really good strategy. Otherwise, if you put upgrades into your main character, like the Banpresto or original main character, you usually won't regret it. They tend to have very good availability, especially in more recent games. So you can't go wrong with that. Skill program. So here you can have skill parts, which may just drop for you, but you can also just make some by spending PP, which, as you can see, this one, costs 250 PP, and this is universal. It's not just like that. Koji has 6000 PP, this is for the whole squad. It used to be individualized, which I actually like more, but it did mean that getting late game pilots up to scratch could be very difficult because they just didn't have any PP. As for what you should buy here, we can't see some on this, so I'm actually going to just quickly make a save here. And jump out. Soft reset macro, all 4 shoulder buttons, and start and select. Where's my clear data? There we go. I don't see anything. In older games, you actually bought pilot stats from a different screen, but now you buy them here from skill parts. You can see that I can actually put some of these on for free because I've actually got the skill part. You can see I've got X3 here, whereas I'd have to buy this one at the cost of 1500 PB. Most of these are pretty well explained, but there is some stuff that I want to point out. Support attack and support defend you don't usually buy. If a pilot is going to make use of them, they usually have them naturally. On the other hand, if a pilot has support attack and doesn't have enhanced attack, you should pick that. If the pilot has an outsized amount of skill relative to other pilots of their level, then second attack is a good choice. It's also called attack again. You need 30 more skill than the target, but it lets you do a support attack for yourself, although enhanced attack doesn't count for that. This is really, really strong. It's been strong in every game that it's in. They've kind of nerfed it in every game that it's in, and it's still really, really good. So anyone who has an unusually high skill value, you should put this on them if you can. It's much cheaper in this game because they nerfed it to 30 skill instead of 20 skill, but it's still really strong. Fighter's Spirit is niche. If you have a character who basically like becomes usable after a morale threshold, so like Camille in the Zeta Gundam, who is a completely almost dead weight before the biosensor activates, is a good choice. Suzaku, who has Curse of Geass, which puts him on like another plane of existence, this is a good choice for. Some units that really want to be above a threshold, like for example Dan Kuga or the Mazingas that have Mazin Power, which activate at 130 morale, this will help you get there faster. But some pilots will just have access to Drive, which is a spell that just gives you plus 30 morale, so that gets you up to 130, you probably don't need Fighter Spirit. Morale plus attack and defend are not super useful in most cases. You won't usually get a turn ahead on morale using them. That's not true for Break Morale Limit, this skill is broken. Yeah, I mean, Fighter Spirit is, compared to a lot of other things, like you do get an immediate benefit out of it, but it also comes at the cost of, you know, not spending PV on stuff like Break Morale Limit. So this potentially raises your maximum morale limit. So normally morale is capped at 150. With this, it goes up to 180, and with parts and some ace bonuses, it can go even higher. Ryoma actually has as his ace bonus, he does way more damage, but only at 170 morale, so this is necessary for him. Potential units that need it will have it, you shouldn't probably buy it. Save E and Save B help your units last longer. If you're having energy problems and you don't think you should be solving them using an item, these can be really useful, especially on super robots that have very limited power part slots. As a rule, the stronger the unit, the less power part slots it has, and as a rule, super robots have less power part slots than real robots. Not always true, but as a rule, that's how it is. Instinct and Guard, these are like your real robot and super robot skills. Instinct is a lot better now, because it also comes with the half cut ability. Nerfed to 30%, but level 1 you are only getting 5% final hit and evade, but final hit and evade is better than hit and evade. Final means that it applies to the number that you see on the screen at the end of the calculations, so when you're on the start combat screen, that's after all the other calculations, so final hit and evasion rates are essentially worth more, and the same for like final damage. So very good. But for your really fast units, this means that they are much more defensible, because even with Instinct in some older games where it didn't have this effect, you could have a unit get clipped by like a 9% hit and just die if it was lightweight enough. The Fairleons in OGs are notorious for this, and it can make using them quite obnoxious, because if one of them dies, then the other one becomes a paperweight. So getting the half cut effect is really nice. Guard is the super robot skill. If you have a unit that is never going to dodge an attack, this will dramatically reduce the amount of damage that they take, and even more so if they have, you know, barriers, a shield, so on. Preemptive Strike is a niche skill. It is very good. This is basically the equivalent of getting like a 15 SP point free cast at the start of the map, but you do have to wonder if it's a really good use of PP. There are some units that are like super robots that do not have access to accelerate or bravery or charge and are having trouble getting into the fight, preemptive strike is really good for them. Otherwise you can pretty much ignore it. Ignore size, this one is really useful. The way size works is large units are easy to hit. This is absolute size. So a size 3L unit will get a bonus to hit another size 3L unit. And it's the same bonus that a size S unit will get to hit a size 3L unit. However, larger units attacking... smaller units attacking into larger units take a damage penalty, and it's a pretty sizable one. Ignore size is a passive ability that exists on many finisher attacks. So for example, if we load up the Zeta Gundam, of course you can't see it because it's not in hyper mode. Here we go. Wings of Light, so this is a finisher attack, it has ignore size. This only ignores negative modifiers. So here, this one has ignore size. They will also often have Barrier Buster, which is also known as Barrier Break or Barrier Pierce. This ignores enemy barriers. It doesn't necessarily ignore all defensive abilities, just barriers, and it doesn't usually work against Proto Devlin or AT Field, but sometimes it does, depending on the game. So ignore size just applies that effect to all of your units' weapons. It's a really good skill. Basically everyone should have this if they aren't in a massive unit. Spirit Endurance is pretty whatever. There are niche use cases for this, but they're in games that don't have this as a skill. Like in Alpha 3, the Macross 7 enemies can inflict morale down, which is normally just annoying. However, Evangelion Unit 01 relies almost exclusively on its AT field to survive because Shinji is not a stunningly good pilot, and if he gets morale down to below 100 morale, then his AT field stops working, and if EVA 01 gets shot down, then it goes berserk and turns into a very nasty boss unit that is hostile to everything. You don't get any experience or money for shooting it down in many games where this happens. You don't get any reward for the units it shoots down, and it's incredibly expensive to repair. So like, this is an instance where Spirit Endurance would be really good. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist in that game, and there's not really a good argument to equip it, I don't think. If a character starts with it, then like, yeah, go off. You have way more skill slots now. In older games, you had only a few skill slots, like 5 to 7, but in this game you have as many as you want, basically. So if someone has it, it's not a big deal, but I probably wouldn't buy it. I'll just take a sip. Me when I've been excitedly talking for 90 minutes, my poor throat. Hit and Run, also known as Hit and Away. This is the skill for snipers. So if we look over here at Gold 4, none of his moves are post-movement. What Hit and Run does is it lets you shoot and then move, which you normally can't do. And in this case, that's very strong, since, you know, he has quite strong ranged attacks, but none of them post movement. So Hit and Run, mandatory on snipers. You otherwise don't need to worry about it too much. Maintenance skill, this used to be 2 separate skills, it's now 1, which is really nice. So Repair goes out to range 2, does 50% more HP, and you can use Resupply after moving, which you normally can't do. Resupply maxes out the subject's energy and restores all of its ammunition. It also reduces their morale by 10, so do be aware of that. But for your like repair specific characters like Far, for example, who mostly has support spells and just enough skills to kind of keep her from dying, but is not a stunningly good pilot, her Methus makes a great heal bot. Units that mostly have supporting spells are also good choices for this, like as I try and look for such a character. Just like Hinoki, for example, has Analyze, Trust, Cheer, Prospect. These are all spells that you cast on other units, so she's the kind of character that you will often find in a repair unit, because even on turns where they're not repairing, they can still be useful to provide like support spells and stuff like that. Lucky Star, this one can be useful, especially if you have a unit that tends to draw a lot of enemy aggro. You can get a lot of money out of this, but that requires a lot of setup. Doing this on your main character may not be a bad idea though, because you're guaranteed to like have access to them for almost the entire game. Supply parts lets you use consumable power parts on adjacent allies. Normally not great, but some characters who have like 4 or 5 power part slots can run around the map using power parts on other characters, and it's quite strong. SP up, this is what you buy on sub-pilots. Proud Ace you probably don't need to buy in this game or in Y, if Y is going to have a map system. And then the remaining ones are the really big ones. So Attacker, you just do more damage. They actually nerfed it by making it a 2-level skill. It used to be a 1-level skill that gave plus 30% damage at 130 plus morale. Now you need to buy the 2nd level to get 30%, and that's really expensive. As you can see, even on my game clear file, I can't actually afford it. This should be on all of your main attackers. Like anytime you get this, if you have a character that you're like, oh, I want to do like massive damage with this character, so like, Ryoma in Getorobo, Kyoji in Mazinger, units that do a lot of damage benefit from this more than units that do an okay amount of damage, because 30% of 100,000 is much more than 30% of 10,000. Full counter, this one basically gives all of your units counterattack. This one is really good on units that are powerful but are a bit weak defensively, so they can always go first and hopefully like kill the enemy before they get killed. Dash increases movement. This is good on anyone, but it's best on pilots who are stuck in low movement units. SP recovery is less important than it used to be, because now you come in at half SP and regain 5 every turn flat. This just makes it so that you regenerate more. It's still really strong. If you get it, then it should go on a pilot who uses a lot of SP, because that will help. XC bonus gives you some more starting extra count. This becomes very strong later in the game, where you start reducing how much the extra count cost of things is. There's some characters that can make really good use of this. Characters that begin the spell Resolve, which gives +5 XC, is a good is a good choice to put this on. Otherwise, you can mostly ignore it. You can see that I've actually got an XC bonus part sitting here, and I just haven't used it. And Tactical Standby, this one is interesting. It's the default skill of a series that debuted in Z3.2. Now, what Zeal does is it lets you take a second turn after your current turn is finished, which is very strong, obviously. And you also will regenerate twice as much SP on the second turn. So you kind of give up acting in one turn to act twice and better in the next turn. This, I would have a hard time justifying a buy, but if a character came with it or you got one for free, it's not bad to slap on someone, especially if they're not a character that you just want to like always be moving towards the front line. So have an experiment with it would be my recommendation. It really won't hurt. What I would suggest is that you only put it on a character who has good post-movement abilities, because they're going to have to move to get into range. But other than that, it's pretty simple. Just buy Enhanced Attack if your guy has Support Attack, buy Second Attack if they have the high skill, buy Fighter's Spirit if it will let them start at or near a threshold, max out Break Morale Limit on everyone if you can, buy save E or save B if you're running out of attacks. If you are losing too much HP or getting hit too much on a real robot or a super robot, buy these. Buy this on all of your guys that aren't like size 3L. You need at least as many ranks as there are differences between size S and size 3L, because 3L is as big as it gets and late game bosses are often that size. Buy hit and run on snipers, buy maintenance skill on repair characters, buy SP up for sub-pilots, buy attacker for damage dealers, buy full counter for glass cannons, buy dash for melee characters, and buy SP regen for everyone who can, you can possibly afford it for, but especially people who use a lot of spells. So this part isn't that complicated. That brings us to the AOS update. Now, Y does have this system, but it looks like they've iterated on it, so some of this might not be true for Y. These are what you spend your MXP on. Now, I'm always a big fan of, if it's like you have this resource which is only spent for this thing, then I like to spend it on things that give me more of that resource. So like this costs 3,000, but you get plus 100 MXP at the end of each mission. That will pay off in 30 missions, and you are likely to run more than 30 missions in this game by a long way. And that also, like, it stacks up as it goes. It's like, I'm getting plus 300 here, and then if you have Maybe set as a supporter, then you get an extra 5 for all the units that were shot down. So that begins paying for itself very quickly. It's been like that since they introduced this idea back in Z3. So these various areas will always do different things. Bridge powers up the Drystrager, or it powers up the Command Aura. Fire Control makes Drystrager's actual attacks better. Scouting System makes... like, this is pretty insane. If friendly units take 20% less damage in Drystrager's Command Aura, is really good if you're moving it aggressively. This stuff makes upgrading units cheaper or lets you upgrade them further, for example. So have a look at these when you get access to them and start planning on what you're going to want to buy. Something you do need to mind is that at the start of the game, in this game you only had access to level 5 upgrades, and you had to invest into AOS research to unlock more. However, this is also the line that gives you more MXP, which is the currency you use to level it up anyway. So I kind of went a long way down this and ended up seeing what all the 8th level upgrades were, because I kind of got to here before I decided to stop. So I could see all of the upgrades and decide on what I was doing based on that. The one thing that I will say is that this function, the lounge, which is related to being able to have more SSP, and the comm system, which adds more supporter slots. I think these are going to be more important in Y from what they showed off about the revamped supporter system. So you might want to pay attention to that. Otherwise, think about just, what you need, and you won't really go wrong spending on anything. I will just point out though, anything that reduces the cost of unit upgrades is really nice, especially early in the game where money is a lot more limited. However, because of the front mission system in this game, you don't have to worry about it as much as you did in earlier games, so you may not want to go for these right away, after all. Other than that, these lines down here in the lab, these also give, this gives more credits, this gives more experience. These are useful, but again, because you can technically do infinite missions, you don't necessarily need to do these, and they're less impactful than they would have been in previous games. But in previous games, we came up with ways to get infinite money anyway by exploiting the game over system. So in some older games, when you got a game over, you could restart the stage and you would keep all the money that you got, and you wouldn't be able to get the skill point, but there were some stages that were really good to farm for money by repeatedly getting game overs on them. So having limited money has never really been that much of a thing in Super Robot Wars. It's kind of down to like how much you like farming. So these will make it so that you have to play like less front missions if you want to max everything out, but you'll do a lot of optional missions anyway. And on that subject, if we go over to our pilot list, okay, this character can cast Cheer and Bless. When a unit under the effect of Cheer and Bless, or in this case it's Gain and Fortune is the actual name of the spell for when you self-cast it, but Cheer and Bless can be cast on an ally, they will get double experience and double PP and double money from the next enemy destroyed. If you can cast these on every boss kill, you will get well ahead of the money curve, and this spell Love will also cast both of those, which is really convenient. Love auto-casts a bunch of spells for a fraction of the cost. It's yeah, it costs 55, but it casts 520. I don't know. How much does Bullseye cost in this game? It is 20. So you got 5, 20, 10, so we're already up at 35. Valor is usually 30 or 40 or 50. Spirit is like 20-ish. Gain is 20-ish. Fortune is usually like 30 or 40. Still, it's a lot of SP worth of spells. This is how you get ahead of the money curve, is by casting Cheer and Bless, or by using a spell like Love that includes them, on the unit that is about to kill the boss. That's kind of the main thing about the game. Now, I am just going to back out again because I want to demonstrate something in the next stage that we're going to go to, in the one that we just started. So this one. Did I remember to save after I upgraded my units? Oh, nice, okay. Well, we'll just custom upgrade all of... I ran out, okay. It's fine. Let's just pretend we don't have most of those, and then we can go to mission, and we'll go to Brave... no, we won't, because Brave Up has really nasty flashing lights in it. We'll go and do the Combattler one instead. So you can see this actually moved me here, but if I wanted to, I could go somewhere else. So it's worth having a look around when you move as part of the mission screen to just see if there's any like patrol missions or bonus missions. That's frustrating. So you can see that as soon as it hits the water, the Kukubine gets dramatically slowed down. The water does give a small defense buff, so lurking in there is not necessarily a bad thing, especially because most weapons will also have a damage penalty for firing into it. But because they changed it so that you no longer fall below 100 morale for being boarded into a ship, I'm actually just going to move her into the Dreistrager and then let it move because it flies. Persist is a good skill to cast at the start of a map. This will last until the unit takes damage, so you can just have it sit there if they've been, you know, evading or whatever. Yeah. I've been playing a lot of games recently that have like attack indicator warning lines, and I'm really getting messed up by this game not having them. So this way we've transported ours over the field. You can turn the map if you need to see what's down here. So for example, we've got some buildings that'll give us some defense bonuses. Amusingly, this section is, I think, not walkable, but you can see it actually has a unique terrain type of Nambara connection, which is kind of nice. And units can just walk up this because there's no like terrain penalty. This game doesn't recognize height as a thing. The Master Kishin games do, which can catch you out if you aren't ready for that. But you can see that Az can just like walk up this cliff, no problem. Which I'm not going to do. I'm going to put her right here. If you are interested in seeing unique dialogue, the protagonist tends to have a lot of it. Enemy grunts can often have some pretty unique dialogue for various specific enemies, which is always really interesting to see. So I'm moving, can this Arco? No, it can't, okay. So I've moved Koji and Az in this pattern so that Dry Strategy can support defend them, but it also means that they're getting the maximum benefit from its command aura. Imagine missing a Mazinger using a Gyaradoga. Is this a Gyaradoga? Am I tripping? No, it is a Gyaradoga. Okay, Mitsuba has no chill and is just going to delete this thing off the face of the planet. Yeah, that did 5,200 damage. You can see that Mitsuba is queued for support defending. Support defend will only happen if your unit would get hit and take damage. It will not happen if your unit either dodges or it has a barrier that will cause it to take 0 damage. So you won't waste support defense. And units that have shields or that have barriers, support defend is very powerful on them because they are considered to be using the defend command, which when you defend, you take 50% damage. If you have a shield, you take 40% damage, and then the barrier comes into play. So units with barriers and shields can support defend and take basically 0 damage. I forget if they play a clip from the anime here, and if they do, it's almost definitely flashing lights warning. So if you have photosensitive epilepsy, maybe don't look at the screen for a minute, and I'll let you know afterwards. Yeah, that doesn't usually happen though. And that requires that you have a strong support attacker as well. Okay, flashing lights warning over. Like, you can do that, but the situation has to be incredibly convoluted, especially because enemies often won't support defend if the unit that is support defending will die. So you need to be in a game where they don't make that calculation, and then the lead attacker needs to kill the support defender, and then the support attacker needs to kill the original target, which is all pretty like difficult to set up. Sadly, Koji can't actually reach from here, so this was actually not a good spot to put Az. Well, I'm legitimately really surprised that he doesn't apparently kill. However, now that we are here, I can demonstrate what I wanted to talk about earlier. So, you might have noticed that I mentioned combination attacks earlier, and we're not going to get to see one anytime soon, but I am going to talk about them now because they're useful to know. So, combination attacks require that there's two ways you can do them. First is if only one unit is deployed, then you can still use the combination attack, but its damage will be significantly nerfed for every missing unit. If all the units, if more than one unit is present, then all of the units need to be touching each other, and in this circumstance and this circumstance only, diagonals count. So, and they don't need to all be touching each other directly, they can be in like a line, for example. So if Koji and Az and the Dry Striker had a combo attack, then this formation would allow them to use it. The other thing about combo attacks that is important is if you look at, for example, Combattler's Super EM Spin, this has an energy cost of 100. Combination attacks often have high energy costs, like 50 or so. That energy cost is paid by all participating units. So if it said like 50 energy, then like Dry Striker would pay 50, the Hukobine would pay 50, the Ichinana would pay 50. It's not total cost, it's per unit cost. So they're expensive, they require multiple units involved. The base power of the combination attack is based on the weapon upgrades of all participating units, and they almost always have both Barrier Buster and Ignore Size, like just as a thing, but they don't always, so make sure that you double check. If you have a combo attack, then when you have the attack highlighted, the units that are needed for it will be displayed up here, and the game will give you feedback on like why you can't do stuff. Speaking of which, if you pick a unit that has a weapon that you can't use, it will actually tell you why. So in this case, for example, we don't meet the morale cost, or for example, we could move over here, and we can't use this one post-movement because it's not a post-movement weapon, so it will actually tell you, which is always nice. This Giaradurga is in deep trouble, by the way. Like, I just want to point out, this is 20 meters tall and weighs 23 tons, which is, you know, significant. It's a fair size. Combattler is 57 meters tall and weighs 550 tons. I'm pretty sure it could just step on the Giaradurga and that would be it. I actually did like a comedy, like whiplash spit take when I read this for the first time, because I was like, 550 tons has to be a typo, right? And like, no, it's just actually like this. And here's a good example of a kind of a mixed character. So, Combattler has a lot of weapons. This is actually nerfed. In older games, it would often end up with nearly 10 pages of weapons, but more recent games have turned that down to being about these ones is what you tend to get. But you can see it has both ranged and melee weapons, but Hyoma is much better in melee than at shooting, but the damage that his weapons do means that it doesn't matter that much. Also, this feature, I'm so glad this is in the game. It's not in the GBA games, and that made using multiple spells really annoying. You can mark multiple spells within a unit to go off together. So you mark them with square, and then when you press circle, they will all get cast, which is very convenient, and now we can use more attacks. This probably won't be a surprise to anyone who's familiar with my channel, but these games do only come with the Japanese dub, and pretty much everyone who is voicing a character in this is the person who played them in the actual show. Sometimes that's through archive audio, sometimes it's because they're just still active. They do sometimes get replaced by newer voice actors, like Ryoma is currently being voiced by the guy who's been voicing him in the OVAs rather than the original Saturday morning cartoon version. But the star power of the voice cast is one of the huge draws that the game has. So we're like not getting these in dub format pretty much ever, and it would really be missing the point to have them in dub format. I'd really like to use a map weapon here, but I don't have the morale for it, which is always a bit frustrating. They also nerfed Chodenji Yo-Yo to being range 3 in this game instead of range 4 like it traditionally is, which makes me a little bit sad. I was going to be like, oh hey, I can show off how the EXE system works, except no I can't because I don't have the effect that makes multi-action cost less turned on. Okay, that doesn't one-shot, so let's just do this. So that did like 1/3 of Combattler's HP. It quite possibly would one-shot Az if I hadn't upgraded her unit way too much. If you want to check what an enemy unit is like, you can just double click on them, which will give you all the same information and show you what spells and stuff they have. If a unit has a power part, then usually if you destroy them, they will drop it and you will get it, which is one of the main ways to get power parts. So keep an eye on enemies that are likely to retreat at low HP. You may have to do stuff to like make sure that you're actually able to kill them. So this is the real power of the EXE system. We got an EX action and multi-action, so if enemy unit is defeated with next attack, perform an extra action. And Az just gets to move again. So this is a full move. She can move and attack and do everything else. Really strong, as you can probably imagine. And now we're gonna make this guy look like an idiot and miss a capital ship. Yeah, when you're speeding up the animation, the UI will be removed. It will also go away on its own during certain attacks for cinematic purposes. So this is like a quintessential super robot skill, Vigor. Just restores half of your HP, no questions asked. So you can not only get hit, but then return fire and not really have to worry about like backing out to get repaired or anything. Now, let's say I want to actually cast, Bless or Cheer or anything like that. I can pull up this searchability and see that one person has access to gain, and it's sadly the Dreistrager, who is not currently active. So if I wanted to take advantage of that, I would have to wait. Alternatively, no, nobody has Bless or Cheer, so I can't take advantage of that at the moment. So I could wait for the Dreistrager to get more experience. In fact, what I can do is we can move here. Repair doesn't cost anything except the action, so if you have nothing better to do, I just assume repair is fine. We can now cast spells during the enemy phase, which is very nice. And you can see over here, you can jump over to like other characters. So for example, since we have a character that can cast Foresee, I can click that and it will say here are all the pilots that have that, and we can have Az cast that on Mitsuba, who will now evade this attack and will kill them and get double experience and PP. And yeah, you can see she actually gained 2 levels from that because the experience gain was doubled. So, strong stuff. So when you do missions in these games, you'll usually get awarded like power parts, you'll get new units and pilots to use, and so on. So if you look at your missions screen, if the game ever loads in, thank you. We have to do this one next, but if there's a unit that you really like, or there's a series that you really like and you want to prioritize doing stages from that series, then that's an option that is available to you. Something else to be aware of is that in this game at least, if you do enough missions without progressing the plot, the game will eventually give an alert and be like, okay, now you have to come and do this specific mission, you can't go anywhere else. So you do have to be ready for that. But you won't really end up in like a Fire Emblem type situation where you could potentially get locked up if that happens. So yeah, that is pretty much everything that we need to know. We've covered birthdays, we've covered how the game works, what skills you should be buying, what parts you should be getting, vaguely how the game flow works. I'm really excited for why. I think it's going to be really good based on the previews that we've seen so far, especially the game system previews look really good. I really like that it looks like they're doing more full screen CGs during the visual novel portions. That's like a huge benefit. So I'll be doing a lot of that once it comes around. 100 Line might take a bit of a backseat when that happens. Otherwise, if you have any questions or like information to share, post a comment. I do see them and I do usually respond to them and answer questions if there are questions. yeah, I'm gonna go and die now because my throat is actually killing me. Because I did a dry run of this earlier where I was just recording it, but I was really unhappy with it. So I'm like, I'll do it as a stream so that way I can like answer questions and kind of show it off in a more natural setting. But that means that I've kind of talked solidly for about 4 hours in 2 blocks. So yeah, I'm not having a good day. I'll be back soonish. I want to get in at least one more 100 line stream before Y drops, and then it'll just be Y for a while. So yeah, thanks to everyone who stopped in. I will see you guys soon. Bye bye.